Princess Lyra of the Valerian Empire had grown accustomed to the endless cycle of suitors and trials. Each year, warriors from distant stars arrived to prove their worth, hoping to win the honor of standing beside her, the sole heir of one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. She had watched countless suitors parade their strength, intelligence, and charm, yet none had ever captured her interest. They treated the trials as contests for prestige, not as opportunities to form a true bond. To them, she was a symbol to be won, a prize to claim, and that had made her wary. Lyra did not need a ruler by her side who sought power or recognition. She wanted someone who could understand her, someone who could rise not by arrogance but through courage, loyalty, and compassion. The new cycle of trials was announced with the customary pomp and ceremony. Ships of all shapes and sizes descended on the Valerian capital, carrying warriors from distant systems. The arena, a vast structure of reinforced crystal and energy barriers, was prepared for the first challenges, tests of agility, combat skill, and strategy. The galaxy watched, and all who entered understood the stakes. Tradition demanded that the winner not only demonstrate superior ability, but embody the ideals of protection, wisdom, and leadership. Among the arrivals was a human named Ethan Hale. Humans, still relatively new to galactic politics, were often underestimated. Their physical forms were slight compared to the heavily armored Valerians or the towering Carad species. Their technology was newer, their strategies less experienced in interstellar conflict. Many of the more established warriors dismissed him, assuming he would fall quickly under pressure. Yet Ethan carried himself with quiet confidence. He did not boast, nor did he indulge in unnecessary displays of strength. He wore a simple combat suit, and his eyes scanned the arena as if studying a puzzle. While other suitors flaunted wealth, lineage, or weaponry, Ethan's calm presence made some observers uneasy. Princess Lyra noticed him immediately. Not because he stood out with flashy armor or a showy entrance, but because he was different. There was no arrogance in his posture, no entitlement in his gaze. He treated attendants and other suitors with courtesy, acknowledging their presence without seeking their approval. There was a subtle dignity in his movements, an understated strength that suggested he relied on intelligence rather than raw force. Lyra felt a flicker of curiosity. Could this human, whom the galaxy considered weak, actually survive the trials? The first challenge began with simple combat exercises designed to measure speed, reflexes, and adaptability. Warriors fought in small arenas, where skill and strategy mattered as much as power. As expected, Ethan faced ridicule from many competitors. Some openly mocked his human physiology, while others tried to provoke him into mistakes. He remained unfazed, assessing each opponent carefully, noting their strengths and weaknesses. He avoided direct confrontation unless necessary, using the arena's environment to gain advantage. When a rival overextended an attack, he used precise timing to counter. When a sudden trap was triggered, he improvised, turning danger into opportunity. To the audience, it seemed almost effortless, yet it required immense focus and calm under pressure. What distinguished him from the others was not only survival but fairness. In one trial, a lesser experienced competitor slipped on the arena floor, leaving themselves vulnerable. Most suitors would have exploited the situation, seizing an easy victory. Ethan, however, offered assistance, guiding the competitor to regain balance before continuing the fight. It was a small act, but it drew attention. Whispers spread through the crowd. This human did not cheat or humiliate. He respected his opponents. Some spectators began to wonder if perhaps this quality was more important than brute strength. As the trials continued, Ethan faced increasingly skilled adversaries. The second phase tested coordination and teamwork. Groups of suitors were tasked with protecting simulated civilians from aggressive droids and environmental hazards. Many competitors argued, refusing to cooperate or seeking to dominate their peers. Ethan, however, assumed a quiet leadership. He organized strategies, assigned roles based on each participant's strengths, and moved with precision. He encouraged hesitant warriors, motivating them without force or condescension. Civilians in the simulation were evacuated efficiently, while rival groups often faltered or caused unnecessary casualties. Judges took notice, recording points not only for performance but for leadership, strategy, and integrity. Princess Lyra found herself increasingly intrigued. She observed him closely during every trial, noting how he treated both allies and rivals. Unlike the others, he did not speak of conquest or status. He asked questions, listened carefully, and made decisions based on reason rather than ego. Lyra realized that he was not fighting for glory or recognition. He was acting out of principle. In his actions, she saw something rare: genuine respect for life, fairness, and the responsibility that came with strength. This human, who many dismissed, was displaying qualities that surpassed the greatest warriors she had encountered in her lifetime. During one particularly intense simulation, a rival suitor attempted to ambush Ethan. The attacker was larger, stronger, and well-armored. Most would have panicked or relied on sheer force to defend themselves. Ethan, however, adapted. He used the terrain, setting up a series of obstacles that slowed the attacker and redirected their movements. Rather than striking directly to dominate, he neutralized the threat efficiently and safely. When the skirmish ended, he helped his opponent regain composure. The judges, initially skeptical, praised his strategy, noting that it combined intelligence, skill, and ethical conduct. It was not enough to survive. How one survived was equally important. As the first day of trials concluded, whispers of the human's unexpected prowess spread throughout the galaxy. Many spectators who had mocked him earlier now watched with admiration and caution. The elite suitors, once confident of easy victory, began to take him seriously. Behind the scenes, some factions whispered fears of change. A human winning the trials was unprecedented. It would disrupt the status quo and challenge long-standing beliefs about strength, dominance, and leadership. Those who held power quietly began to consider ways to undermine him, though none dared act openly. Princess Lyra's interest deepened with each passing hour. She observed his interactions with others, the calm way he reassured a panicked competitor, the careful thought he gave to every decision, the fairness with which he treated allies and adversaries alike. She remembered the countless suitors who had arrived before him, boasting, fighting, and scheming. None had ever made her pause and consider their character. None had demonstrated humility, intelligence, and courage in equal measure. Ethan's presence caused a subtle shift within her. She began to question the meaning of the trials themselves. Were they truly designed to find the strongest warrior, or the one who embodied wisdom, honor, and integrity? By the second day, the challenges grew more complex. Trial courses combined physical obstacles with problem-solving tasks. Competitors faced environmental hazards, shifting gravity fields, unstable platforms, and simulated crises designed to test judgment under pressure. Ethan adapted with remarkable efficiency. He did not rush, did not act on impulse. Instead, he observed, calculated, and executed with precision. In moments of danger, he acted decisively but never recklessly. Other competitors, relying on brute force, stumbled or faltered. Spectators began to murmur that perhaps humans were more formidable than anyone had anticipated. One pivotal moment occurred during a trial meant to simulate a galactic crisis. Warriors had to rescue a group of civilians from a collapsing energy dome while simultaneously fending off aggressive droids. Many competitors focused only on defeating enemies, treating the scenario as a combat exercise. Ethan, however, prioritized evacuation. He organized the civilians, coordinated with other suitors, and dispatched droids strategically rather than engaging in reckless combat. Lives were saved efficiently, earning him high marks. Judges commented that his actions reflected not only skill but foresight and compassion, a rare combination. Princess Lyra watched from her elevated seat, her attention fully on him. She saw the way he moved, the decisions he made, the way he treated others. Something stirred within her, a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and an unspoken recognition. This was not a human seeking to claim her as a prize. This was someone demonstrating strength tempered with wisdom. The contrast with other suitors was stark. Some were aggressive, some manipulative, some obsessed with appearances or prestige. Ethan, in his quiet, deliberate way, was showing what true capability could look like, and she could not look away. By the conclusion of the first phase, only a handful of suitors remained. Among them, Ethan had risen to the top not by force alone, but through intelligence, leadership, and moral judgment. The judges, initially doubtful, were forced to acknowledge his prowess. The audience, once dismissive, now cheered him as a serious contender. Rival factions began to murmur fears about the implications of a human winning the trials, sensing a challenge to tradition and authority. Even Princess Lyra, though cautious, felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this contest, often reduced to spectacle and pride, could finally reflect the qualities she valued most. As the sun set over the crystal spires of the Valerian capital, Ethan stood silently in the arena, reviewing the day's events in his mind. He did not celebrate or boast. Instead, he considered the next phase, knowing the trials would grow even more difficult. Challenges of strategy, ethics, and diplomacy awaited. He understood that winning would not simply require skill in combat, but courage of heart and clarity of mind. And though he had earned respect, he remained focused, determined to proceed with integrity, guided not by ambition alone, but by principle. Princess Lyra left the arena that evening with thoughts she had never entertained before. For the first time, she felt a genuine interest in a suitor, not because he was the strongest or most cunning, but because he showed what she had long wished for in a companion, a combination of courage, intelligence, and compassion. Something deep inside her stirred, a quiet recognition that this human might be different, that he might be the one who could face the trials and the empire with strength tempered by wisdom, that he might not only survive the challenges ahead, but also inspire change in a galaxy that had long relied on tradition over true understanding. And so, the first part of the trials concluded. The human had not only survived, but had quietly reshaped perceptions across the galaxy. The stage was set for the next phase, where skill alone would not suffice, and where character, courage, and the choices made under pressure would determine the path forward. For Princess Lyra, and for the Empire, the arrival of this human marked the beginning of something unexpected, something that could change the course of history forever. The second phase of the trials began under the glowing twin suns of the Valerian capital, casting long shadows across the vast arena. Unlike the first phase, which tested combat skill and strategy in controlled environments, this stage was designed to challenge leadership, ethics, and the ability to inspire cooperation. The suitors would now face not only physical threats, but also political and moral dilemmas. Each challenge was meant to reveal character as much as ability, and the stakes were higher than ever. Success here would prove that a suitor could guide others, protect the vulnerable, and make wise decisions under pressure. Ethan Hale understood the shift immediately. Combat had taught him patience and observation, but diplomacy, ethics, and leadership were more complex. Unlike the other suitors, who had relied heavily on their strength or cunning, he had little formal training in galactic politics. Many species approached this phase like a game, seeing negotiation and alliances as contests to dominate. Ethan, however, approached it differently. He began by listening carefully, observing behaviors, and asking thoughtful questions. He treated each participant with respect, regardless of their species or reputation. While others were eager to exploit weaknesses, he looked for solutions that would benefit everyone involved. Princess Lyra watched him closely as the challenges unfolded. She noticed the subtle ways he interacted with the other suitors. Where others argued or tried to intimidate, he remained calm. Where others sought advantage through manipulation, he sought understanding. He asked questions that demonstrated genuine curiosity rather than strategy. It was clear he was learning quickly, adjusting his approach based on observations, and thinking not only about immediate outcomes but long-term consequences. For Lyra, it was fascinating. She had never seen a suitor display such balanced thought and humility. The first test of this phase was a simulated planetary crisis. The suitors were given command over a divided city facing multiple hazards: natural disasters, alien raiders, and internal unrest among the population. Each team had limited resources, and every decision could mean life or death for thousands of civilians. Most suitors focused on deploying their strongest forces to suppress threats aggressively. They saw the task as a tactical exercise, treating the simulation like a war game. Ethan, however, approached the challenge holistically. He assessed both the threats and the needs of the population. Instead of rushing to attack, he prioritized evacuations, medical care, and coordination among the city's inhabitants. During one particularly tense moment, a simulated energy surge threatened the main power hub. Some suitors ordered full force against the surge, hoping to neutralize it immediately. Ethan quickly analyzed the situation and noticed that direct confrontation would destabilize the surrounding structures. He redirected efforts to reinforce key supports and safely guide civilians away from danger. While some competitors panicked under pressure, he stayed focused, calmly issuing instructions and maintaining morale. By the end of the simulation, his team had minimized casualties and preserved critical infrastructure, an outcome that earned the admiration of the judges and spectators alike. Princess Lyra could not help but feel impressed. While others had relied on aggression or deception, Ethan had demonstrated patience, insight, and foresight. More than that, he had shown concern for lives beyond his own performance. It was a quality she had rarely encountered in warriors, alien or human. She began to understand that these trials were no longer simply about proving strength. They were about proving the capacity to care for others while making difficult choices. And in this, Ethan excelled. The next challenge involved negotiations with a simulated faction of alien delegates. Each suitor had to resolve a complex dispute that could potentially lead to war. The other competitors approached the task with predictable arrogance. They issued ultimatums, leveraged threats, and attempted to force compliance. Ethan, on the other hand, listened attentively. He asked questions to understand each faction's priorities and concerns. He acknowledged their fears and worked to find mutually acceptable solutions. Slowly, he guided the delegates toward compromise, demonstrating that dialogue and empathy could achieve what force alone could not. During one tense exchange, a representative accused Ethan of attempting to manipulate the process. Many of the other suitors smirked, expecting him to falter under pressure. Instead, he calmly addressed the concern, explaining his reasoning without condescension or defensiveness. The delegates relaxed, and the negotiation continued smoothly. Judges noted that his approach not only resolved the dispute efficiently, but also strengthened alliances, highlighting a combination of diplomacy, patience, and moral clarity. As the challenges progressed, Princess Lyra began to spend more time observing him directly. She noticed small details: the way he made eye contact with nervous participants, the way he acknowledged contributions without seeking credit, the subtle encouragement he offered to those struggling. He did not demand obedience or recognition. He led by example, and his presence inspired cooperation naturally. In a system that valued dominance, this quiet leadership stood out. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of hope, not only for the outcome of the trials, but for what the Empire could become under the guidance of someone who understood responsibility in its truest sense. However, not everyone welcomed Ethan's rise. Within the Valerian Empire, factions of nobles and influential leaders saw him as a threat. A human winning the trials would challenge centuries of tradition. It would disrupt long-standing hierarchies and weaken the influence of entrenched elites. These factions began plotting in secret, attempting to manipulate challenges and create hidden hazards. They hoped to eliminate him without revealing their interference, using both subtle sabotage and overt pressure. During one challenge, a dangerous environmental simulation was manipulated. Platforms that were supposed to be stable became treacherous, and obstacles moved unpredictably. Several suitors panicked, some falling and sustaining simulated injuries. Ethan, however, adapted quickly. He analyzed the shifting terrain, guided others to safety, and maintained calm despite the chaos. Even when a rival attempted to exploit a malfunction to gain advantage, he intervened to ensure fairness, reinforcing his reputation for integrity. Judges recorded his actions meticulously, noting that he maintained composure and ethical conduct under extreme stress, a rare trait among competitors. Princess Lyra began to see that Ethan's presence had an unexpected effect. Not only was he excelling, but he was inspiring others to act better. Competitors who initially mocked him began cooperating, following his example in strategy and fairness. Even those who remained competitive began to recognize the value of collaboration over selfish ambition. It was a subtle but powerful shift in the arena's atmosphere. The trials were not just testing individuals, they were shaping behavior, and Ethan's influence was evident. One evening, after a long day of challenges, Princess Lyra requested a private audience with him. She wished to understand more about his perspective and motivations. In a quiet chamber, she spoke with him for hours. He told her about humanity's history, about perseverance through adversity, about learning from mistakes rather than avoiding them. He spoke of the importance of protecting others and building trust through actions rather than words. He did not boast or exaggerate, and his honesty resonated with her deeply. Lyra shared her own thoughts in return, revealing the pressures of expectation, the loneliness of leadership, and her fears about ruling an empire that demanded perfection. Ethan listened without judgment, offering insight only when appropriate and showing empathy in ways that surprised her. In that moment, she realized that the trials were no longer just about competition. They were about understanding the kind of partner she needed to face the challenges of the galaxy. As the second phase reached its climax, only a few suitors remained. Ethan's performance had been consistent, marked not only by skill but by character. Judges praised him publicly, noting that his approach demonstrated leadership, diplomacy, and moral judgment far beyond his experience. Spectators cheered, and whispers of admiration spread across the audience. Meanwhile, rival factions grew increasingly desperate. Secret manipulations were uncovered, and attempts to discredit him backfired. Lyra intervened discreetly to ensure the integrity of the trials, surprising many who had expected her to remain neutral. In one final exercise, suitors were tasked with resolving a simulated galactic conflict. They had to manage resources, negotiate alliances, and defend populations from unpredictable threats. Most relied on overwhelming force, but Ethan focused on balance and foresight. He forged partnerships between factions, neutralized threats through strategy rather than aggression, and prioritized the welfare of the civilian population. His decisions reflected both intelligence and ethical judgment, winning him further points from the judges and gaining admiration from participants and observers alike. By the end of the second phase, it was clear that Ethan had not only survived but excelled in ways no other human, or suitor, had. His combination of intelligence, courage, fairness, and leadership had reshaped the trials. The Empire's ancient traditions were being challenged, not by arrogance or aggression, but by simple human integrity. For Princess Lyra, the realization was profound. This suitor was different. He was not there to claim her as a prize. He was there to demonstrate what it meant to act with honor, compassion, and responsibility. As night fell over the Valerian capital, Ethan reflected quietly on the events of the day. He understood that the next phase would be even more difficult. The trials would test not only his abilities, but also his capacity to remain true to his principles under pressure. Factions opposed to him would not relent, and hidden challenges awaited. Yet he felt confident, not in his strength alone, but in his commitment to act with fairness, courage, and wisdom. Princess Lyra, meanwhile, found herself thinking about him long after the trials had ended for the day. She had watched many suitors over the years, but none had inspired the sense of respect, curiosity, and hope that Ethan had. His presence had already begun to shift the atmosphere of the Empire, subtly encouraging fairness and cooperation. She understood that the final phase would determine not just who would win the trials, but what the future of the Empire could become. And in that thought, she felt both anticipation and something new, an understanding that the human might not only survive but transform the galaxy's perception of strength, leadership, and partnership. The second phase ended, leaving only 3 suitors standing, with Ethan clearly ahead. Yet the challenges were far from over. The final phase would combine combat, leadership, and diplomacy on a scale never before attempted in Valerian history. Every decision would be scrutinized, every choice would carry consequences, and the future of the Empire and Princess Lyra's own path would hinge on the outcome. As the arena lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, the air was filled with anticipation, tension, and a growing sense of wonder. For Ethan, the trials were no longer just a contest. They were a proving ground for principles, character, and vision. And for Princess Lyra, they had become a revelation, showing that courage, empathy, and wisdom could sometimes surpass raw strength. The galaxy had begun to watch closely, and one simple truth was becoming undeniable. This human was not just a contender. He was a force that could change the course of history. The final phase of the trials began under the clear skies of the Valerian capital, the arena now. Transformed into a massive simulation that combined combat, diplomacy, and crisis management on a scale never attempted before. This stage would determine the ultimate victor. It was not enough to be strong, clever, or morally upright alone. A suitor had to show balance across every challenge, proving they could protect, lead, and inspire on multiple levels at once. Only then could they be considered worthy of standing beside Princess Lyra. Ethan Hale stepped into the arena with quiet determination. He had survived the previous phases, exceeding expectations and earning the respect of both judges and spectators. He had proven that humans, often underestimated across the galaxy, could demonstrate intelligence, adaptability, and integrity under extreme pressure. Yet he knew this phase would be different. The final trial combined every element of the previous challenges. Alliances would be tested, enemies would exploit weaknesses, and every decision carried real consequences. Even simulated failure could affect scoring dramatically. The arena was divided into multiple zones. One represented a sprawling city under siege, another a complex network of trade and diplomacy between alien factions, and a third a battlefield where combat and strategy intertwined. The challenge was to manage all three zones simultaneously, ensuring the survival of civilians, the success of negotiations, and the neutralization of threats. Other suitors approached the task aggressively. Some divided their attention poorly, sending teams haphazardly and ignoring civilian needs. Others attempted to dominate negotiations through intimidation or bribes. Ethan observed carefully before taking action. He mapped the zones, assessed threats and resources, and developed a plan that prioritized cooperation, protection, and efficiency. He coordinated his small team with precision, assigning tasks based on skill while remaining adaptable to changes. In the city zone, he organized civilian evacuation routes and established safe zones. In the negotiation zone, he facilitated dialogue between conflicting factions, ensuring that compromises benefited all parties. On the battlefield, he used strategy rather than brute force, setting traps and creating defensive formations that minimized casualties. One of the greatest challenges came when a rival suitor attempted a surprise strike in the city zone. The attacker's forces were strong, armored, and aggressive, aiming to seize control of the civilians to earn points. Most suitors would have reacted with panic or retaliation, but Ethan maintained calm. He directed civilians to safety, reinforced defensive positions, and engaged the enemy only when necessary. The fight was swift but decisive, with minimal harm to the city's population. Judges noted his ability to prioritize lives over victory, a hallmark of true leadership. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra observed from the stands. She had watched Ethan throughout the trials, noting his intelligence, courage, and empathy. In this final phase, she saw him shine even brighter. He moved with confidence but without arrogance, treated competitors fairly, and displayed a level of foresight rarely seen even among seasoned warriors. She realized that his victories were not simply the result of skill. They were the product of character, integrity, and thoughtfulness. The galaxy had long equated strength with dominance, but Ethan's performance challenged that belief entirely. During the negotiation phase, an unexpected crisis arose. A faction threatened to withdraw entirely, claiming that the simulation rules were unfair and that their concerns were ignored. Other suitors attempted to coerce the faction, offering rewards or issuing veiled threats. Ethan approached calmly. He listened to their concerns, acknowledged their grievances, and proposed a solution that satisfied all parties. He did not demand compliance. He earned it through reason and respect. The faction agreed, strengthening alliances and demonstrating that true leadership required understanding as much as authority. As the trials progressed, hidden threats emerged. Sabotage attempts, likely orchestrated by rival factions opposed to a human victor, introduced hazards in the arena. Unstable platforms, malfunctioning defense systems, and false alerts designed to create confusion. Many suitors faltered under the pressure, allowing panic to dictate actions. Ethan, however, maintained focus. He assessed each problem methodically, adapting quickly and guiding others to safety. His calm under pressure inspired confidence, even among competitors who had once mocked him. Judges praised his ability to handle unexpected crises without losing composure, a rare and invaluable quality. One particularly tense moment occurred when an unexpected energy surge threatened the negotiation zone, threatening the delicate agreements Ethan had worked to establish. Competitors reacted impulsively, attempting to overpower the situation with force. Ethan analyzed the energy patterns and realized that direct intervention would worsen the situation. Instead, he devised a sequence of precise adjustments to stabilize the area while simultaneously communicating with all factions to ensure safety. His actions prevented disaster, earning him immense points and admiration. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra reflected on the humans standing before her. She had seen suitors who relied on power, cunning, and intimidation. She had seen those who sought to exploit weakness or manipulate the system. Ethan's approach was different. He led through understanding, foresight, and ethical action. His victories were not merely personal, they uplifted those around him. Civilians were protected, competitors were treated with respect, and alliances were strengthened. Lyra began to understand that these qualities were exactly what she had been seeking in a partner, even if she had not recognized it until now. In the final combat segment, Ethan faced his strongest remaining rival. The competitor was a seasoned warrior with unmatched physical power, reinforced armor, and an aggressive combat style. Most spectators assumed this would be the human's downfall. However, Ethan approached the battle strategically. Rather than attempting to overpower his opponent directly, he used agility, timing, and the arena environment to his advantage. He avoided unnecessary confrontation, exploiting weaknesses in his opponent's positioning, and gradually gained control of the field. When his rival faltered, he offered assistance rather than striking a finishing blow that would humiliate. The judges took note. Victory tempered with compassion was a rare and remarkable quality. As the final moments of the trials approached, tension filled the arena. The judges convened to deliberate, reviewing scores for combat, diplomacy, leadership, and ethics. The audience waited in silent anticipation. Then the announcement came. Ethan Hale was declared the victor. A human had defeated every suitor, proving intelligence, courage, compassion, and leadership in equal measure. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, recognizing the significance of the achievement. Even as the celebration began, rival factions seethed. Their attempts to manipulate outcomes had failed, and the galaxy had witnessed an unprecedented victory. Princess Lyra stepped forward, approaching Ethan with calm dignity. Tradition required that the princess choose whether to accept the winner as her partner. Ethan had already demonstrated skill and character. Now, the decision lay with her. She spoke, her voice steady. "Ethan Hale, you have won the trials. You have shown courage, intelligence, and integrity, but winning is not enough. I must choose freely." Ethan looked at her, acknowledging the gravity of the moment. He had approached the trials with honesty and principle, but he had not anticipated this personal choice. "Princess Lyra," he said, "I will accept only if you truly wish it. I seek no prize or status, only the chance to stand beside someone I respect." Lyra smiled, a quiet warmth in her expression. "I choose you, Ethan, not because you won the trials, but because you have shown what I have long sought, wisdom, courage, and compassion. I choose you because you see others as I wish to be seen. Together, we can shape a future worthy of this empire." The audience, having witnessed the entire trials, understood the magnitude of the moment. A human had not only survived unprecedented challenges, but had done so in a way that redefined the ideals of strength, leadership, and partnership. Cheers echoed through the arena, spanning species and worlds. Even rivals who had doubted him felt respect, recognizing that his approach reflected not weakness but the highest form of capability. In the days following the trials, Ethan and Lyra worked together to address the Empire's challenges. Their partnership became a symbol of unity and cooperation, demonstrating that strength was not only measured in power or conquest, but in wisdom, ethical judgment, and the capacity to uplift others. Policies were revised, alliances strengthened, and factions that had opposed change began to see the value of this new approach. The Empire, long bound by tradition, began to adapt, guided by the principles Ethan had embodied throughout the trials. Princess Lyra and Ethan's bond deepened as they navigated the complexities of leadership together. In private moments, they shared strategies, discussed ethical dilemmas, and reflected on the trials that had brought them together. Ethan's perspective, shaped by humanity's experiences and resilience, complemented Lyra's understanding of the Empire's history and responsibilities. Their partnership became more than ceremonial. It was a true collaboration, built on mutual respect and shared vision. Across the galaxy, the story of a human defeating all suitors and earning the trust and respect of a princess spread quickly. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. It was not brute strength that defined them, nor technology alone, but a combination of intelligence, adaptability, courage, and compassion. Humans were no longer to be underestimated. As the sun set over the Valerian capital, Ethan and Lyra stood together, overlooking the city. The trials were complete, the Empire watched, and a new chapter had begun. Neither dominance nor fear would define their rule. Instead, partnership, understanding, and integrity would guide the way. Together, they had proven that true strength lay not in conquest, but in the ability to protect, inspire, and lead with conscience and courage. The galaxy had witnessed something remarkable. A human had defeated the most formidable suitors, won the respect of a princess, and reshaped the meaning of leadership. History would remember the trials not only for their intensity, but for the human who had risen above expectations, demonstrating that compassion, intelligence, and integrity could triumph over all. And in that victory, Princess Lyra and Ethan Hale stood as equals, partners ready to face the challenges of the galaxy together, proving that courage and honor could transcend species, tradition, and expectation, leaving a legacy that would inspire generations to come.